My name is Ryan Reynolds, not the actor. Just your average 29-year-old IT guy from Ohio. And this is the story of the day I stopped being the family's emotional punching bag and started being the architect of my own freedom. It started with one sentence. 6 words. You weren't invited anyway, my dad laughed. I stood in the kitchen, stunned. I had just asked him why my trip had been canceled, the one I had spent 3 years saving for, planning, dreaming about. A Mediterranean cruise, my first actual vacation since college. I had booked everything down to the excursions and meal upgrades. It was mine, my one reward after years of working overtime, skipping holidays, and bailing out my parents from whatever fresh disaster they had gotten into. They didn't just cancel it, they spent it. You spent my savings, I said, each word heavy enough to sink a ship. My mom rolled her eyes like I was being dramatic. It was just a vacation, she said. We assumed you'd understand. Understand what? That my money, my time, my mental bandwidth was theirs to consume whenever they pleased. My dad took a sip of his coffee, completely unfazed. First-class flights, a premium cruise, everything included. You wouldn't have fit in. Kid, not your style. And that was the moment something snapped. They had no idea every single booking had been made under my name. The airline, the cruise, the hotel, even the travel insurance. Because I didn't trust them with logistics, or credit cards, or basic competence. So I smiled, pulled out my phone, scrolled to the airline confirmation. Tap, tap, canceled. Mom gasped, "What are you doing?" I didn't answer. Just opened the cruise line's app, tapped through the options. Suite gone, excursions canceled, dining upgrades reversed, insurance claim filed, transaction disputed. Dad's smugness evaporated. You wouldn't dare, he said. Too late, I said. He lunged for my phone like a child who'd just seen his toy taken. I stepped back. You see, Dad, the thing about using someone else's name for luxury travel is they get all the power. Mom's face went sheet white. But what about our flight? We leave in hours. I shrugged. Sounds like a you problem. You ungrateful little... I held up a finger. Careful, Dad. You're about one tantrum away from having to sleep on the porch. He fumed. Mom scrambled for her phone, desperate to rebook, to salvage something, but it was too late. The money, coming back to me. The trip dead in the water, their bags packed for a vacation that no longer existed. I watched them panic. It was like witnessing a house of cards collapse, a silent, slow-motion implosion. And then I twisted the knife. Oh, and I should probably mention, I said, scrolling to my bank app, I also reported every cruise transaction as unauthorized, since, they were... Mom gasped. No. Dad's face darkened. You'll regret this. I laughed. I doubt it. He growled something under his breath, but I was already walking out the door. That night, I blocked them both. No texts, no calls, no guilt. But by the next morning, the avalanche began. First came the passive-aggressive texts. Sweetheart, we were just stressed. We didn't mean anything by it. Then the rage. You selfish brat. You ruined our plans. Then the guilt trips. We're your parents. We raised you. You owe us. Ah, there it was. The old favorite. The You Owe Us chorus. A tune I'd been hearing since I was 18 and started paying the electric bill just for this month. Then came groceries, then rent, then their car insurance, then Mom's dental work, then Dad's impulsive investment in eco-lawn tech that turned out to be some guy named Carl selling overpriced grass seed out of a van. I had always helped. Always. Quietly. Without drama. Because I believed that's what good sons did. But somewhere along the way, it had stopped being help and started being obligation. And when I finally drew a line, they called it betrayal. By afternoon, I'd received a Facebook message from Aunt Hazel. Haven't heard from her in 5 years. Suddenly, she's worried about my mental health. Your mom says you stole from them, Ryan. This doesn't sound like you. Call her, okay. I didn't reply. Instead, I made myself a cup of coffee, played some jazz, and opened my travel app. I checked the refund status approved. The disputed charges were coming back to my account. Travel credits were reissued in my name. And then I did what any rational person would do. I rebooked the trip. For me, same cruise, same suite, same upgrades, but this time, I added a little extra: a private balcony dinner, a massage package, VIP snorkeling. I hit confirm and smiled. An hour later, the doorbell rang. I didn't have to look. I knew. I opened the door slowly. There stood my parents. Mom looked like she'd been crying. Dad looked like he'd been punched in the soul. "Ryan," Mom said, forcing a broken smile. "Honey, let's talk. Talk about what I asked, how you stole my money and lied about it." "It wasn't theft," she insisted. "It was just borrowing. We needed a break." I crossed my arms. So did I. That trip was supposed to be my break. The one thing I did for me. Dad scoffed. "Cry me a river. Life's not fair. Neither is getting blacklisted from a cruise line for booking fraud," I replied. Grinning, his jaw dropped. "What?" "Oh yeah," I said. "They flagged the account. Permanently. You're welcome." Mom looked like she might faint. You rebooked the trip," she whispered. "I did. First class, I leave next week. Should I send a postcard?" Her lips trembled. "We can't afford another trip." I nodded. "Then maybe don't steal next time." I closed the door. They stood there for a moment, stunned, helpless, and for once it wasn't my problem to fix. I watched them walk away, the weight of their entitlement dragging behind them like anchors. I had taken back what was mine, not just the money, not just the vacation, my dignity, my peace, and I wasn't giving it up again. The silence was the first thing I noticed. No knocks, no ringing, no doorbell ambush, just silence. After years of being on call like an unpaid employee, I finally had quiet, and it was glorious. I spent that weekend in blissful solitude. I reorganized my bookshelf, watched old sitcoms, even treated myself to an expensive steak dinner, the kind I used to talk myself out of because Mom might need help with the grocery card this month. But peace never lasts long when your family thrives on chaos. By Monday morning, it started again. This time, louder, meaner. "Ryan, you need to stop this nonsense." Dad barked in a voicemail. "We're your parents, not your enemies." "Not my enemies, just people who emptied my savings and laughed in my face." I didn't respond. I had nothing left to say. That's when the rumors began. I got a text from my cousin Lena. "Hey, Aunt Carol said you had a breakdown and canceled your parents' trip out of spite. What's going on?" I rolled my eyes so hard I saw my childhood flash before me. Did she mention the part where they stole my money to book it? She didn't reply. Neither did my uncle, who used to praise me for being the responsible one whenever Dad got drunk and tried to sell crypto to Grandma. They weren't looking for the truth. They were looking for someone to blame. By midweek, the messages shifted again. This time, back to guilt. Mom sent a long text, a wall of words filled with typos and justifications. "We never meant to hurt you. We thought maybe you'd come with us eventually and surprise us. You always seem sad, and we wanted to cheer you up." It took everything in me not to laugh. They'd tried to gaslight me into thinking this theft was a gift. The only surprise I wanted was to never get another passive-aggressive message about how family sticks together. Right after they used me like a credit card with a pulse, I didn't reply. Instead, I started withdrawing in more ways than one. I removed my access from their online bill pay accounts I had set up, managed, and funded for years. I froze my credit. I changed my passwords. I even called the auto shop I'd been covering for Dad and canceled the pre-authorization I didn't remember agreeing to. It was time to draw every line I had erased for them. I didn't warn them. I didn't fight. I just vanished from their ecosystem. No more lifeline. And that's when the real panic began. Dad showed up at my apartment Thursday night. No call, no warning, just a knock loud enough to rattle the glass. I opened the door just enough to see his flushed, angry face. "Are you out of your mind?" he snapped. "Do you think this is funny?" I blinked. "Which part?" "You left your mother in tears." "Oh, so I made her cry. Not the fact that you stole from me." He pushed against the door. "You're acting like a child." "I'm acting like someone who finally learned how to say no." He stared at me, not confused, not even angry, offended, like he couldn't process the fact that I had stopped playing my assigned role. "So you've always been dramatic," he muttered, "even as a kid." I tilted my head. "And you've always been manipulative. Looks like we're both consistent." He didn't like that. "You'll regret this," he said. I already regret not doing it sooner. Then I shut the door in his face. The next day, Mom emailed me, not texted, emailed. That alone was alarming. Subject family should mean something. The body was worse. "Ryan, I don't know what's gotten into you. Your father is beside himself. I'm trying to hold this family together, but you're making it impossible. We didn't steal anything we borrowed, and we were going to pay it back eventually. This punishment isn't fair. We were just trying to enjoy life for once. We deserve that. You had the money. You could have shared. You always make everything about you. I read it twice, then a third time, then I deleted it. No apologies, betrayal, no ownership, just a symphony of emotional blackmail and martyrdom. I didn't just delete the email, I blocked her, too. It hurt, I won't lie. No matter how toxic, cutting off your own parents feels like amputating a limb. But I'd rather lose a limb than let the infection spread. By Sunday, the tide shifted again. Ashley, my little sister, she was the golden child. The one who could crash her car and still get a new one by the weekend. The one who failed 3 classes in college but still got her tuition paid without question. The one who didn't know how to use online banking but somehow always had new clothes. She texted me that afternoon. Ryan, I'm not taking sides, but this is really hard on Mom. The classic Ashley maneuver. Pretend neutrality while reinforcing guilt. I replied, did you know where they got the money for that cruise? She left me on read. An hour later, another message. Ryan, you need to let this go. You're tearing the family apart. No, I typed back. I'm just not letting myself be torn up anymore. Still, it shook me. Ashley and I weren't close, but her message hit a nerve. It felt like a betrayal all over again. And it made me realize something. They hadn't just stolen money, they had stolen years. Years of feeling like I was only valuable when I was useful. Years of being praised for being dependable, but discarded the moment I had a need of my own. Years of being the fixer, the helper, the peacemaker, and never once being helped in return. It wasn't just a vacation they'd taken. It was me, my peace, my dignity, my right to rest without earning it through sacrifice. So I stopped waiting for an apology that would never come. Instead, I called my bank, locked everything down, requested statements for the last 6 months. Something inside me was starting to itch, a feeling like maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the only thing they'd taken. That night, I found it, a payment I didn't recognize. $380 to a luxury luggage site. I didn't order that, but I knew who did. I called the store the next morning, gave them the transaction ID. The woman on the phone confirmed it. The delivery address was my parents'. I felt a cold knot form in my chest. They didn't just take my savings. They used my card. Without my permission, that night I pulled my credit report, and that was when I saw it. A new credit line, under my name, opened 2 months ago, from a store I'd never shopped at. It hit me like a train. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was fraud, and I wasn't going to be quiet about it anymore. I don't know how long I sat there staring at my credit report. It felt like the numbers were mocking me, laughing in the same voice my dad had used when he said I wasn't invited anyway. I clicked deeper into the report, tracing the credit line back to a high-end department store, the kind Mom always fawned over in magazines but never had the means to shop at. I called the store, played dumb, said I noticed a strange account in my name and wanted to verify the purchase history. The woman on the phone was kind, maybe a little too helpful. Absolutely, Mr. Reynolds. We have 3 recent transactions, a designer luggage set, a luxury wristwatch, and a prepaid vacation package gift card, all purchased in-store and delivered to an address in Silver Creek Lane, my childhood address. I thanked her and hung up. That's when I stopped feeling shocked. I started feeling angry. This wasn't an impulsive mistake. This was calculated, planned. They'd used my information, my credit, my trust, and for what, designer bags and a cruise. I forwarded everything to my bank. They escalated the fraud claim immediately. But that wasn't enough. I needed more. I needed answers. And I knew exactly who could help. Her name was Julia, my cousin. Technically my second cousin, but we were close enough to drop the numbers. She worked in real estate, specialized in trust management, and had a no-nonsense attitude I admired. Unlike the rest of the family, she'd never asked me for money. She was the only one who once pulled me aside at a family BBQ and whispered, "Your parents treat you like a vending machine." I texted her need to talk, urgent, family-related. She responded within a minute, "Call me now." I did. The moment I explained, she let out a low whistle. "Ryan, this isn't just bad. This is identity theft. Straight-up felony stuff." I figured, what do you want to do? Burn it down legally? She chuckled. I like that. Okay, here's what we do. First, freeze everything: credit, utilities, subscriptions, Cut off the bleeding, then you file official identity theft affidavits. I'll connect you with a lawyer who specializes in this, and I'll dig into any property or assets they might have touched with your name. Wait, property. Yes, if they used your info for a credit line, who's to say they didn't leverage your name for a refinance or apply for a loan? The pit in my stomach returned. I had co-signed a home equity line of credit once, years ago. When Dad claimed he was starting a consulting business that never materialized, Julia kept talking, but my ears rang. What if they'd done more? That night, I didn't sleep. I scanned every email I'd ever received from lenders. I logged into the old mortgage portal I hadn't touched in years. And there it was. 6 months ago, a new refinance, in my name, with my signature, only it wasn't my signature. It was a forgery, sloppy, but close enough that most systems wouldn't catch it. I felt cold. They'd stolen my savings, maxed my credit, and now they'd leveraged my name to secure their future. That was the moment the rage crystallized into resolve. I emailed Julia every document, every screenshot, every login, every call log. She replied 10 minutes later, "This is going to get messy, but we'll win." I texted Ashley, just one line, "You might want to ask Mom and Dad about the refinance and the fraud charges coming their way." No response. By morning, my bank had filed the first fraud report. I opened disputes on every transaction I hadn't authorized. I notified the credit bureaus, froze my reports. Then I met with the lawyer Julia recommended. He reviewed everything in silence, then leaned back in his chair. "Ryan, this isn't just financial fraud, it's elder abuse in reverse. They're abusing you, the younger generation. You have a solid case. I don't want to send them to prison." I said, though I wasn't entirely sure that was true, "I want them to face consequences." "Then let's start with financial scorched earth." We filed official identity theft affidavits, notified the lenders, began preparing to legally detach my name from the fraudulent accounts. But the real revenge? It wasn't the legal paperwork. It was the power shift. For once, I wasn't reacting. I was controlling the narrative. I sent one final message in the family group chat. Just one line. "Effective immediately. All financial activity involving my name is under legal review. Any attempts to contact me will be documented. Good luck." Then I left the chat. 2 hours later, Julia texted me a screenshot from a private family Facebook group. It was my mother, writing a long, winding post about betrayal from within and how some people are so blinded by money they'd destroy their own family. I laughed hard. They'd been exposed, and they knew it. And it was only the beginning. The silence didn't last long. By midweek, the legal notices were hitting their inboxes. The mortgage company had received my fraud affidavit and launched an investigation. The department store had flagged the luxury charges and frozen the card. The cruise line sent a formal alert, stating their account had been suspended pending inquiry. I didn't have to lift a finger, the walls were collapsing all on their own. Then came the desperate messages. Ashley finally broke the radio silence with a late-night text. "Ashley, Ryan, please, Mom's freaking out. She says we could lose the house." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because the next morning, Julia sent me something that made everything worth it. A scanned copy of the second mortgage they'd taken out with a forged signature, mine. "It's bad," she said on the phone, but the lender traced the IP address. It came from their house. "Is that enough?" I asked, heart pounding. "It's more than enough, especially with the date stamps, your GPS record, and the digital audit trail. You were nowhere near a computer when this was signed." I sat back, stunned. So they're done. Almost. The lenders canceling the refi and calling in the debt under their names only. No more hiding behind you. It was poetic. All the comfort they'd stolen from me, it was about to be yanked from them legally, cleanly, and with no way to talk their way out. That night, I finally got a voicemail from my dad. His voice was flat, controlled, but there was a tremor under it. "Dad, I don't know what you think you're proving, but you're blowing this way out of proportion. You want to ruin your own parents over some misunderstandings? You're not the man I raised." I played it twice, just to make sure I heard it right. I wasn't the man he raised. No, I was the man who escaped the one he tried to raise. The next morning, I got a letter from the mortgage company. It confirmed my removal from the agreement and stated that, due to the falsified documentation, they were freezing the account and demanding immediate payment from the remaining signers, my parents. I stared at it for a long time. It was done. They couldn't use my name again. They couldn't hide behind my bank account, couldn't fake my signature. couldn't guilt me into fixing what they broke. And then something unexpected happened. My dad showed up at my apartment. He was thinner than I remembered, face pale, clothes wrinkled like he hadn't slept. I didn't invite him in. I just stood in the doorway, arms crossed. He looked at me like he wanted to say something profound, maybe something rehearsed, but all that came out was, "Dad, you humiliated us." I tilted my head. "No, you did that yourselves. I just stopped covering for it." He flinched. "We're family." I nodded. "You're right. That's what makes it worse." He stood there for a beat longer, then left without another word. It didn't feel triumphant. It felt like closure. I poured myself a coffee and opened my laptop, booked a small cabin upstate. No luxury, no showy vacation, just peace, just me. As I zipped up my duffel, my phone buzzed one last time. A text from Ashley. "Ashley, I hope you're happy. You destroyed everything." I stared at it for a moment, then typed a single reply. "Me? No, I just stopped letting you destroy me." And with that, I turned off my phone. It was over. The cabin wasn't anything fancy. It didn't have 5-star amenities or ocean views, but it had something I hadn't felt in years: silence. Not the kind that punishes, like the silence my parents weaponized. This silence was peaceful, restorative. The drive up had been quiet. No calls, no guilt-tripping voicemails, no demands disguised as family concern. I'd blocked every number that had ever tried to manipulate me. The family group chat, left and deleted. My social accounts, scrubbed clean, reset, private. I was detoxing not from devices, but from damage. The first morning, I sat on the porch wrapped in an old hoodie, sipping coffee and watching the fog roll off the lake. I didn't realize how tightly my chest had been wound until I exhaled and felt it loosen, like I could finally breathe without anticipating the next crisis call or favor masked as an obligation. Inside, the wood stove crackled quietly. I cooked my own breakfast, eggs and toast, nothing special, and ate in full silence. No one interrupting, no one complaining, no sideways digs about how I wasn't doing enough, wasn't being grateful. It was the first meal I'd had in a long time that wasn't seasoned with resentment. By day 3, something odd happened. I laughed. Not the bitter laugh I'd grown used to, the one that bubbled up when things were so messed up it was comical. No, this laugh was real. Warm. I was watching some random old comedy on my laptop, eating popcorn I'd burned slightly, and something about the absurdity of it all just hit me. I cracked up, alone, and it felt amazing. That night, I sat down and wrote something I never thought I would: a letter. Not to my parents, not to Ashley, to myself. I wrote about the years I'd spent minimizing their treatment, about the way I'd absorbed every guilt trip, every slight, every financial theft like it was normal. I wrote about birthdays alone, skipped celebrations, being treated like a tool, not a son. Then I wrote what I would tell that younger version of myself. If I could go back, you deserved better. You were always enough. And walking away wasn't selfish, it was survival. I folded the letter and slipped it into my journal. Then I went outside, lit a small fire in the pit, and stared at the stars. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. I just sat there, grounded, finally feeling like I belonged somewhere, even if that somewhere was simply a moment with myself. A few days later, I returned to the city. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I was ready. The apartment felt different, lighter. I unpacked, cleaned, lit a candle. I even put on music, something I never did before, because noise always made me anxious. Now it felt like claiming space, my space. Work resumed, life moved on, and I started building something new. I reconnected with an old friend, Mia, someone I hadn't talked to in years because my family had always made me feel guilty for having outside connections. She was warm, curious, and didn't ask for anything beyond my presence. We started meeting for lunch, then dinner, then more. I never told her everything right away, but one evening, sitting on her balcony with takeout containers between us, I started to. She didn't judge, didn't pity, just listened. And when I finished, she said softly, "You didn't escape a family. You escaped a trap." It floored me, because it was the truth I'd never allowed myself to admit. Months passed. Spring melted into summer. I got promoted, started saving for a new place. The old apartment held too many ghosts. I wanted something that felt truly mine, just like that first bite of peace I'd tasted up at the cabin. I never unblocked my parents. Not even when a letter arrived at my work address, sent through a third party. It was from my mother. No return address, just my name in her neat, slanted script. It read, "Ryan, you've made your point. We understand now, but families aren't supposed to turn their backs on each other. I still don't think what you did was fair, but I hope you're happy. Your father says you were always ungrateful, but I know you had a kind heart once. Maybe you'll find it again." No apology, no accountability, just manipulation wrapped in sentiment. I didn't reply. I shredded the letter and flushed the pieces down the toilet. Not out of spite, out of closure. Because I realized something important in that moment. I was no longer writing chapters that included them. Their presence wasn't just unnecessary, it was toxic. And I didn't owe them reconciliation for the sake of optics or obligation. The final thing I did was update my will. Mia's name went in, so did a few charities I cared about, but not a single cent, not a whisper of recognition, was left for the people who used me. The last line I wrote in that document felt more like poetry than legal language. To those who taught me how to lose everything, thank you. It's how I learned to find myself. And with that, I closed the book on a lifetime of guilt, shame, and misplaced loyalty. I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. And that was the most powerful revenge of all. Story 2. I was 34 when everything in my life turned to ash. You know those disaster stories where the signs were there all along, but you missed them because you were busy pretending everything was fine? Yeah, that was me. My name's Noah. I used to be a regional logistics manager. Decent money, constant travel, hotel breakfasts, and always chasing delays that weren't my fault. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills. I thought I had a stable marriage, too. Spoiler, I didn't. I was in Tampa for a week-long site visit when the bottom fell out. Came home to find my key didn't work. The doorman looked at me like he'd seen a ghost. "She moved out," he said. "She who? Your wife," he said slowly, like I was the one losing it. Turns out, while I was coordinating freight shipments, Melissa had been coordinating her own departure. She'd forged my signature, altered the condo lease into her name, and sold it to some stranger, just like that. No note, no warning, gone. I later found out she'd moved to California with someone else, someone who didn't work 12-hour days and came home smelling like diesel fumes. I didn't even have time to feel angry. I was too stunned. Lawyers told me it would take months, maybe years, to sort it all out. Meanwhile, I had no home, no clothes, no backup plan. So I did what you're not supposed to do at 34. I moved back in with my parents. The basement smelled like old tax documents and forgotten dreams. My dad joked about the beer I used to sneak down there in high school. My mom made the fold-out bed. They said it was temporary, just until I got back on my feet. At first, they meant it. They cooked dinner. They said focus on you. But by week 3, I started finding utility bills on the basement steps. Oh, must have slipped. My dad said, I started paying for groceries, then gas, then the heating. I fixed the upstairs sink, replaced the broken thermostat, upgraded the router because Dad said Netflix kept buffering. I even bought them a new TV for Christmas, a 50-inch Samsung I found on sale. Mom cried, Dad said nothing. Meanwhile, I burned through my savings. I told myself it was okay, temporary. I was job hunting, waiting for the divorce to wrap up. Then one morning, I came upstairs and found my dad standing in the kitchen. Not angry, just blank. Noah, he said, I think it's time. Time for what? You've been here long enough. This isn't working. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, You already ruined our lives once. Don't make it worse. That line hit like a punch in the gut. Ruined their lives. I didn't argue. I packed my clothes in a garbage bag and left that night. I found a Craigslist room at the edge of the city. My roommate, Jeff, talked to himself in the mirror and kept a sword by his bed. I didn't ask questions. I kept a chair against my door the first week. Then, out of nowhere, Uncle Don called. He'd heard about the fallout. Said a logistics company he worked with needed a warehouse supervisor in the city. I interviewed 2 days later, got the job on the spot. Company car, steady hours, respect. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. I didn't tell my parents right away. I wanted to settle in, feel grounded. But news spreads fast in families. A week later, Mom texted, We're proud of you. Come over for dinner. Then Dad called, said we needed a family meeting. I should have ignored it. But curiosity's a tricky beast. I drove over after work in my company Polo. Maybe I wanted them to see it, just a little reminder that I wasn't their basement project anymore. Same cracked driveway, same tacky ceramic frog on the porch. Inside, Mom hugged me. Dad pointed to the dining table like he was herding cattle. Papers were laid out, coffee cups, legal pads. Dad started talking immediately about inflation, rising costs, how credit card companies were robbers with logos. Then he leaned forward. "We need help with our loan," he said. No apology, no acknowledgement of the garbage bag exit, just "we need help." I didn't respond right away. Instead, I reached into my backpack and pulled out a book I'd picked up at the airport, a satirical self-help thing. Bright yellow cover, bold letters, "How Not to Be an Idiot." I slid it across the table. "Sure," I said, "I'll help, but first, read this." My dad's face turned beet red. For a second, I thought he might throw it. "My mom," she laughed. Loud, like she hadn't laughed in years. That made it worse. I stood up and left without another word. The next morning, I walked out to head to work and saw my dad standing by my company car. He had a key, a spare he must have kept from years ago when we shared a vehicle. He was trying to open the door. I shouted from the porch. He froze. Said, "You owe us, Noah, after everything we've done." I called the police. Didn't want to, didn't plan to, but I had no other choice. They showed up, told him to leave, no arrest, just a warning, but the damage was done. That was the moment everything really changed. After the cops made my father leave, I just stood there on the porch. The morning air was cold, but I didn't feel it. I felt hollow. No apology, no explanation, just entitlement. I didn't go to work that day. I called in sick and meant it. Not flu sick, soul sick. That night, I told myself it was over, that calling the police would be the final blow, that my parents would finally get the message. I was wrong. 2 days later, I got a call from HR. "Hi, Noah," said a stiff voice I didn't recognize. "We received an anonymous complaint about your conduct." I blinked. What kind of a conduct? Using the company car for personal errands, frequenting bars during work hours, unprofessional behavior with clients. I laughed. "That's ridiculous." She didn't laugh back. "There's no hard evidence," she said, "but we have to log it." I hung up with a pit in my stomach. It was all fake. I hadn't been in a bar in months. The last time I even saw a client in person, I was shaking their hand at a warehouse tour. But that wasn't the end. 3 days after that, my bank froze my account. Apparently, someone tried to log in from a device registered at my childhood address, my parents' house. They failed a security question but got 2 out of 3 right. I went to the bank in person, showed ID, locked everything down, opened a new account, changed every password, email, Wi-Fi, Netflix, everything. And yet I still felt exposed. Then came the real blow. My boss called me into his office with a serious look on his face. "There's something you need to see," he said, sliding over a printout. It was an email, supposedly from me, to one of our biggest clients. A threat, a demand that they pay early or face breach of contract lawsuits. I read it twice. It looked perfect. Logo, language, tone, signature, only I hadn't written it. Our IT team dug in. Turned out, it had come from a spoofed email 1 letter off our real domain, sent from a public library 2 towns over. I asked for the location. It was a library 6 blocks from my parents' house. That's when the illusion shattered. No more doubts, no more maybe. It was them. Or at least, it was him, my father. The one who couldn't stand the idea of me succeeding without him. I called my mom that night. "Do you know what he's doing?" I asked. Silence. Then, softly, she said, "He's scared. Noah, scared you'll forget us." Forget them. They were trying to ruin me. I told her I was done. No more contact, no more favors. If they reached out again, I'd press charges. She didn't say anything after that, just hung up. For a while, it was quiet. I got my bearings. Work stabilized. My boss backed me, said I handled it well. I found a nice apartment downtown. 1 bedroom, big windows, no shared walls, no voices behind thin doors. For the first time in ages, I slept through the night. But peace doesn't last when people like my father feel cornered. About a month later, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I ignored it. Then it called again and again. 3rd time, I picked up. A nurse? My father had slipped on the porch, broken his wrist and 2 ribs. "You're listed as his emergency contact," she said. I hesitated. Then she said, "He told us to give you a message if you hesitated." I waited. He says, "Tell Noah I'm sorry. I just need my son." For a moment, I felt the pull. That old ache. The one that says maybe they've changed. I drove to the hospital. He looked small, fragile, human. I just missed a step, he said, smiling like we were old friends. Went out for the mail, and boom, floor met face. I nodded. Then he said it. Maybe you could come back for a while, just to help with the bills? It's been hard. There it was. The cycle, every apology with a request attached, every crisis an invitation to bleed for them again. I stood up. I hope you heal, I said, but I'm not coming back. He didn't fight me. He just nodded. When I stepped out into the hallway, my mom was in the waiting area. She didn't say a word. Didn't need to. Her eyes were full of that old silent expectation that I'd cave. I walked past her without slowing down, but I should have known. People like them don't stop. They scheme. A week later, I received a letter. No return address. Inside was a copy of a life insurance policy. My father's. I was listed as the sole beneficiary. There was a post-it note attached. Just in case anything happens, I want you to have everything. I'm sorry. What? He wasn't dying. His injuries were minor. The nurse said he was already complaining about hospital food. But the timing, the wording, it felt off. I tucked it into a drawer. Then came the second letter from a lawyer. Apparently, I had agreed to serve as financial agent for my parents in the event of emergency. Signed, dated, legally binding, except I never signed it. I called the firm. The paralegal admitted that my father said I would sign soon, that I'd verbally agreed. I threatened to file a fraud complaint. They dropped everything immediately. That was when I realized it wasn't just guilt or sabotage anymore. This was control. An all-out campaign to tether me to them by any means necessary. So I fought back. I changed emergency contacts, canceled any lingering ties, bank accounts, old addresses, even Netflix. I visited a lawyer, documented every attempt, got advice on how to protect myself. Then one Friday evening, I came home to find my mother sitting on my front steps. She looked tired, broken even. He's not eating, she said. He keeps saying he's ready to go. I didn't answer. She pulled out her phone. A video. My father in a recliner, speaking to the camera, saying goodbye, apologizing, listing debts, saying he wished things were different with me. She said he sent it to his lawyer that morning. Not quite a suicide note, but close enough to trigger alarms. I told her to go home. I didn't promise to call him. I didn't promise anything. Then I went inside and didn't sleep that night, because I didn't know what was worse. If he was bluffing, the morning after my mother's doorstep stunt, I couldn't shake the feeling that something worse was coming. That video of my dad saying goodbye, it wasn't just manipulative, it was calculated. But before I reacted, I needed clarity. A week later, that clarity came from the last place I expected. Mrs. Langley called me. Yes, that Mrs. Langley, my childhood neighbor, the one who ran the HOA like she was a retired admiral, she hadn't called me in years. I hate to get involved, she said in her brittle voice, but I saw something strange last night. Your father was in the garage with a box marked Noah's taxes. I froze. I thought you took everything when you left, she added. So did I. That weekend, early Sunday morning, I parked 2 blocks away and circled to the back of the property, just like I used to sneak out as a teenager. The side door to the garage was still loose on its hinge. Inside, everything looked normal except for one small gray plastic tub tucked behind the water heater. My name scrawled in fading Sharpie Noah, old docs, inside. Tax returns, pay stubs, copies of my ID, bank forms, W-2s, old insurance paperwork, a gold mine for identity theft, and there were sticky notes. In my dad's handwriting, check 2019, gross income, ask Noah about PayPal account, call credit union. I didn't stop to think. I grabbed everything, slammed the lid shut, and left. Back at my apartment, I laid it all out like a detective at a murder scene. He wasn't just sabotaging me. He was plotting. I went to my bank first, sat down with a fraud specialist, and asked her to check for any unusual activity. She raised an eyebrow, typed for 5 minutes, and then said, "You're not going to like this." 2 weeks earlier, someone had tried to open a credit card in my name using an old address and a phone number that wasn't mine. The application was flagged, thankfully, but it had been attempted and logged. I filed a police report that same afternoon. I didn't name names, just stated facts. I made sure it was on record. Then I called my Uncle Don. I didn't expect him to pick sides, but I needed to talk to someone who'd lived in the same orbit as my parents. I told him everything: the fake documents, the bank fraud, the hospital drama. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "They tried something like this with me, too, back in '08. Wanted me to co-sign a loan, told me I owed them. When I said no, they stopped talking to me for a year. It hit me like a hammer to the chest. This wasn't a new trick. This was their pattern, and I had to end it. Not just defend myself, end it." I started with the lawyer who drafted that fake financial agreement. Reached out casually. "Coffee," I said. He agreed. We met at a cafe halfway across town. I brought a manila envelope and set it on the table between us. "I'm not here to yell," I said. "I just want clarity." Inside were a copy of the police report, a fraud alert notice from my bank, my written statement denying ever signing anything. I didn't accuse, I just showed him the pile. His face went pale. "I was told you gave verbal consent," he said quickly. "Your dad insisted." He seemed desperate. I didn't think. "You didn't check," I corrected. "That's going to cost you." I didn't mean money. I meant leverage. I told him I wouldn't go to the state bar or the press yet, but I needed a notarized legal statement confirming that no agreement between me and my parents had ever been valid, that all documents were drawn without my consent. 2 days later, it arrived in my mailbox, signed, official. I made 6 copies. One went to the insurance company, one to my job's legal team, one to Uncle Don, the other's insurance. Then I went hunting. An old contact of mine, Pete, worked in asset recovery. He owed me a favor. I gave him a name, my own. "Just tell me what you can find." Recent soft inquiries, loan checks, account requests tied to my identity. A week later, he sent me a spreadsheet. 6 attempts, all traced back to my parents' address. 2 credit cards, a car lease, a personal loan, even a short-term cash advance company. I stared at the list and felt something inside me harden. This wasn't desperation anymore. This was war. I wasn't going to fire back with fists. I wanted consequences. Legal, financial, social. I started gathering my case, everything. My dad's email threatening to cut me off if I didn't comply. Screenshots of him logged into an account using a device tagged with my name. The forged email to my company's client. Witness statements from the HR rep and fraud specialist, Mrs. Langley's voicemail. I made copies, highlighted, numbered, organized. And then I mailed it to the fraud department at the life insurance company, the legal office that drafted the fake agreement, my dad's old employer he was still consulting, and they needed to know, the bank, the police. Not a single word of fiction, just facts, truth, clean and sharp. Then I filed for a formal cease and desist order through my attorney. That was the first move. 2 nights later, I saw the first ripple. My phone buzzed. A number I didn't know, voicemail only, my mom's voice. Tired, quiet, almost scared. "Noah, your father got a call from the insurance company. They're asking questions. He's panicking. Please, can we talk?" I didn't respond. The next day, Uncle Don sent me a screenshot of a text my dad sent him. "Do you know what Noah's doing? He's trying to ruin us." Uncle Don replied, "He's protecting himself. Maybe you should try that." That night, I opened a bottle of wine and watched an old movie with my feet up. It was the first time I genuinely relaxed in over a year, but I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. Because people like my father don't accept defeat. They plot. I thought sending those files out would end it. But people like my father don't retreat. They reload. 2 weeks after I mailed the documents, I got another knock on my apartment door late at night. I checked the peephole and nearly groaned out loud. My mother. She stood there holding a large envelope. Eyes red, lips tight. I opened the door halfway. "This isn't a good time." She didn't argue. She just held out the envelope. "It's from your father," she said. "He wanted you to have it." I took it without a word. She hesitated. "He's not well. Not just physically." "I know," I said. "I've known for a while." "See," then I shut the door. Inside the envelope was a single-page handwritten. A will? No assets listed, just one sentence. "To my son Noah, I hope someday you understand I did what I thought was right." There was no signature, no witness, no legal binding, just empty justification, scratched in shaky penmanship. I put it in the shredder, and that should have been the end, but it wasn't. The next curveball came from work. My supervisor called me in. "Noah," she said, frowning, "do you have any extended family applying here?" That stopped me cold. "No." "Why?" "Because someone claiming to be your cousin applied for a warehouse position, then called HR 4 times asking about you, where your office is, what car you drive, What shift you work? I felt my stomach twist. My cousin Mason, a guy I hadn't seen since high school, a loser who followed my dad like a shadow. It wasn't about the job. It was reconnaissance. I left work early and filed a no-contact petition at the courthouse. This time, naming names: my father, my mother, and now Mason. When the clerk asked for a reason, I said, because they don't understand the word enough. But the final straw didn't come from them. It came from within. One afternoon, as I sat on my balcony with a cold drink and the sun finally peeking through the city haze, I realized something. I wasn't afraid of them anymore. I wasn't reacting. I was done. So I made a decision. I was leaving for good. New job, new city, no forwarding address. The kind of clean break you see in movies. And I didn't just pack. I prepared. I sold everything I didn't need, donated what was left. I broke my lease with the penalty and didn't blink. I told my job I'd be moving out of state for a better opportunity. No hard feelings. They understood, even threw me a little going-away party. I gave no one my new number, not even old friends. I drove 12 hours west with nothing but my dog, a few boxes, and the sound of wind cutting through silence. My new place quiet, anonymous, peaceful. I got a modest house with thick walls, tall trees, and no ghosts. Took a logistics job in a small firm that didn't care where I came from, only that I showed up on time. I made new routines. Walks in the morning, coffee with real creamer, no more fast food at midnight. I started dating a woman named Elise. Soft-spoken, clear-eyed. Not once did she ask about my parents. She said, "You seem like someone who's been through fire," I said, and came out clean. For the first time in my adult life, I slept without dreams. About 6 months later, I received a letter. No return address, just my name printed in familiar block letters. I opened it cautiously. It was from my mother. "Your father passed away. It was sudden. Heart failure. I know you won't come. I know you don't owe us anything. But I thought you should know. He asked for you. I told him you were happy." He smiled at that. "Mom." I stared at the page for a long time. No anger, no grief, just stillness. I folded the letter and put it in a drawer I never opened again. He was gone, and I didn't miss him. 2 weeks after that, my mother showed up. I was coming home from work when I saw her sitting on the steps of my porch, aged and small. I froze. She stood up slowly and handed me another envelope. "I owe you," she said. Inside was a cashier's check. $24,000. The exact amount I'd spent helping them over the years, give or take. "I sold Dad's boat," she said. "Took out a small settlement, paid off his debts. This is yours." "I don't need it," I said. She looked me dead in the eyes. "I do." I didn't speak. "I won't come back," she said. "I just wanted to end this clean." I nodded. She walked away. I never saw her again. I didn't cash the check. Instead, I donated it to a nonprofit that helps adult children escape abusive or manipulative family structures. On the memo line, I wrote, "For the ones who waited too long to leave, some stories don't end with slamming doors or courtroom drama. Some end with silence, with space, with healing. Mine ends here, in a town where no one knows my name, where I wake up to birds instead of guilt, and where love isn't currency." People still try to contact me sometimes. My cousin Michelle emailed me family reunion this June. "Please come, we miss you." I didn't open it, because some ties aren't broken. They're cut, and I didn't just walk away. I walked forward, into peace. Story 3. My name is Ethan Harris. I'm 28, and I never thought I'd be that guy, the one airing family drama on Reddit. But sometimes, silence just makes you complicit. For most of my life, I believed that family meant safety. A net. People who protected you when the world got ugly. Turns out, sometimes your worst betrayal comes from across a picnic table with someone flipping burgers and calling you champ. It all started at a backyard barbecue 2 months ago. You know the type: folding chairs, overcooked hot dogs, aluminum trays of potato salad no one really eats. It was the first time we'd all gathered since my sister Marissa's wedding. She and her husband Kyle had told everyone they'd do a local honeymoon low-key, budget-conscious, nothing flashy. I bought it, why wouldn't I? We were halfway through dinner, paper plates balanced on our laps, when my dad stood up with his beer bottle raised like it was some kind of toast. He smiled and said, "We used Ethan's savings to send Marissa and Kyle on a luxury honeymoon in Greece." I laughed. I thought it was a joke, like a really awkward attempt at family humor. Nobody else laughed. Marissa waved like a pageant queen. "Thank you, Ethan." and people clapped. I blinked. Wait, what? My mom came over with her phone, grinning like she'd just won the lottery. You have to see the yacht and the villa. Oh, and the sunset dinner. There they were. Photos, videos, champagne popping, Kyle and Marissa lounging on a deck with a view straight out of a romance movie, posted on their joint Instagram. Naturally, I hadn't even known they had a joint Instagram. I felt my stomach twist. $8,000. That's how much I'd saved. Every spare dollar from working 2 jobs, driving deliveries at night, tutoring on weekends. I'd kept the cash in their safe at home temporarily while waiting to open a new account. Gone. All of it. I asked my mom, "You're serious?" She smiled like I was being dramatic. It was a family decision. You weren't using it. And Marissa's wedding was a once-in-a-lifetime event. I turned to my dad. "Why didn't you tell me?" He shrugged. "You're young. You'll bounce back. Besides, it's not like you were using it right now." I just stood there. Marissa leaned over and said, "Don't be weird about it. You know I'd do the same for you." Spoiler, she wouldn't. I didn't yell, didn't flip the table. I set my plate down and walked straight to my car. No goodbyes. That night, I sent a text. "When do I get my savings back?" My mom replied with a wall of text about family, sacrifice, love over money, and how Marissa had always looked out for me. My dad's text, "Let's not ruin this with money talk. We're family." That's when it clicked. They never planned to pay me back, not even a little. They saw my savings as community property, a gift I never gave. So I smiled, played nice, and called a lawyer. His name was Jonathan Rhee, friend of a friend. Quiet guy, listened without interrupting as I laid it all out: photos, texts, even a photo of the handwritten safe note my dad and I had signed when I stored the money. Nothing formal, but enough. Jonathan didn't laugh. He said one sentence: "That's theft." He sent them a formal letter, certified mail. Clear as day, pay the $8,000 within 14 business days or face small claims court. Then the silence started. No messages, no calls. A week passed, then 2. Then my cousin Jamie texted me. "Uncle Rob said you're suing the family over a misunderstanding." Dude, you serious? The fact that they had already spread the story told me everything. They weren't trying to make it right. They were rewriting it, making me the villain. A few days later, I came home from work and found a package on my doorstep. No return address. Inside, a photo album, glossy prints, dozens of them. Marissa and Kyle in Santorini. Notes scribbled on the edges. "Best brother ever. Thanks for the memories. We owe it all to you." It was surreal, like they were rubbing it in. I texted my dad. "Did you send this?" He replied, "We thought it might help you see it from our side." The next day, my mom showed up at my apartment. No call, no text, just knocked like it was 1998. I let her in barely and she started crying immediately. "You're tearing us apart. You've always been the thoughtful one. This obsession with money, it's beneath you." Then came the health card. "I just had some tests done. There might be something serious, and this stress, it's not helping." I didn't flinch. She'd pulled this move before. In smaller ways. She was a pro at guilt, but this was another level. I told her, calmly, "I hope it's nothing, but I still need my money. We can set up a payment plan." She left. A week later, Jonathan got a call from her lawyer. They offered $2,000, called it a gesture of goodwill. Jonathan laughed. We declined. Then came Marissa. She showed up at my job. I work at a university library, handling resource management. It's usually quiet, peaceful. Not that day. She waltzed in, oversized sunglasses on her head, full makeup, designer bag swinging like she was on a runway. She said loudly, "Let's not make this ugly." I walked her outside to avoid a scene. She started talking, fast, emotional. Kyle's checked out. The honeymoon was a blur. I didn't even want to go. Mom and Dad made me. Then she hit me with it. "I'm thinking of divorcing him." I blinked. "Why are you telling me this?" She looked at me seriously. "If I give you the money back, I need you on my side when it all blows up." I asked, "Where would you get the money?" She smiled. "Let's just say Kyle's not careful with his passwords." That's when I knew the whole house of cards was collapsing. They were all turning on each other, scheming, playing games. I looked her dead in the eyes. "I don't want his money. I want mine. And I don't want your drama." She left in a huff. That night, I found 2 of my tires slashed. One of them had a thin, deliberate slice, almost surgical. I couldn't prove it was them. But I knew I filed a police report, gave Jonathan the update. We escalated, filed the small claims case, served the papers. It was real now. The court papers changed everything. For weeks they'd been treating it like a tantrum, a phase I'd outgrow. But when they were officially served, it stopped being a misunderstanding. Now it was a threat, a public one. And for a family obsessed with appearances, that was the real offense, not the theft. The exposure. I knew the blowback would come. I just didn't expect it from Kyle. He sent me a Facebook message from a burner account. No profile photo, just a few sentences and 3 screenshots of bank transfers and receipts. He said, "I didn't know the money was yours. Marissa told me it was a gift. I didn't ask questions, I should have." Then he added, "When I found out, I confronted her. She said you were overreacting, that you'd never really need the money anyway." That last part hit hard. Not just because it was cruel, but because it was so typical. They saw my boundaries as disposable. And now, even Kyle, her own husband, was peeling away from the group. He closed with, "I know this doesn't fix anything, but you deserve to know." I thanked him, filed the screenshots, and sent them to Jonathan. That was the first real crack in their foundation. Then the real mess started. I was coming home from work one evening when I noticed a car idling near my building. Nothing unusual except that the driver ducked when I got close. I didn't stop walking, but I logged the license plate. It was registered to my uncle, the same one who clapped loudest at the barbecue. Coincidence? Maybe, but that week, someone called my landlord pretending to be me, asking about moving out and subletting. Then 2 anonymous reviews popped up online about my job performance, both full of vague accusations about ethical concerns. And then, the one that truly pushed me to the edge, a formal complaint at the university. Filed anonymously, claiming I'd been using my position to access restricted information. No evidence, no names, just smoke and mirrors. My supervisor pulled me aside. "I don't believe it," she said, "but we have to file a report." Luckily, I had nothing to hide. Clean digital logs, clean email chains, a boring, responsible paper trail. Still, the timing was clear. They couldn't beat me in court, so they were trying to shake me apart piece by piece. I sent it all to Jonathan. He said, "This is targeted harassment. Keep documenting everything." Then came the drop. A letter, hand-delivered to my mailbox. No stamp, no return address. Inside, a single note. "You were never good at sharing." Typed, all caps, no name, and taped to the back. A copy of the safe deposit note my dad had signed, only it had been crossed out with black Sharpie, like that made it disappear. I stared at it for a long time. Not because it scared me, but because it proved something. They weren't just angry I wanted my money back. They were angry that I exposed them, that I dared to say no. I went straight to the police, filed another report, showed them the letters, the landlord impersonation, the university complaint. Then I upgraded my door camera, set up a second one in the hallway. I wasn't going to be caught off guard again. That weekend, I got a knock on the door. When I looked through the peephole, I almost didn't believe it. It was Aunt Laura, the only one in the family who had never played games, never taken sides. She looked tired, pale, like someone who hadn't slept well in weeks. I opened the door a crack. She held up her hands. "I'm not here to lecture." "Okay. I just came to say I'm sorry. I didn't expect that. I didn't know about the money." She said, "I thought you were being dramatic, but then I saw the court documents." She looked down at her shoes. "I saw how they spun it, how your mom told everyone you were having a breakdown. I felt something crack inside me." "Thank you," I said. "That means a lot." She nodded. "If you need help moving or need a place to stay, I'm here." It was the first real support I'd gotten in weeks, and it reminded me I wasn't crazy. I wasn't the villain. A few days later, Jonathan called. "They've hired a new lawyer, someone more aggressive." "Let me guess," I said, "they're countering." "Not yet, but I wouldn't be surprised." Then he paused. "Ethan, I think it's time we talk about leverage." He was right. This wasn't just about $8,000 anymore. It was about the story they were telling, the version of me they were selling to anyone who'd listen. So I did something they didn't expect. I wrote a statement, a clear, honest, painfully detailed letter explaining everything, and I sent it to every extended family member who'd been at the barbecue. I included copies of the safe note, the messages from Kyle, and the certified court filing. The subject line was simple: "The truth you didn't hear." Responses came in slowly. A cousin I barely knew wrote, "I'm sorry, I believed them. I shouldn't have." An uncle said, "If you ever want to visit Arizona, We've got a guest room. One by one, the silence broke. Their control of the narrative cracked, and I realized that maybe, just maybe, they weren't invincible. But it wasn't over. Marissa emailed me again, this time with a different tone. She said she was filing for divorce, that Kyle had moved out, that she was sorry, genuinely sorry, and wanted to talk. I didn't answer. The next day, she showed up at my apartment. I didn't let her in. She sat on the steps and said through the door, "Mom's planning something. She's going to sue you for defamation. She's already talking to people about how you destroyed her blog." I didn't speak. "She's scared," Marissa said. "Not of you, of losing the image she built." I waited. Then she said, "If you talk to me, I'll tell you everything." I walked away from the door. Let her voice fade, because I didn't need whispers anymore. I needed action. That night, Jonathan filed for a restraining order. Named my parents and Marissa. Included all the notes, the fake complaints, the impersonation, the threats. We attached a claim for emotional distress. They wanted war. I was done playing defense, and they could call me ungrateful, vindictive, dramatic. But I had the one thing they couldn't fake. The truth. 2 weeks before our court date, I received a padded envelope with no return address. Inside was a flash drive, no label. I plugged it in using an old laptop I didn't care about, half expecting malware, half expecting nothing. But it was a video, grainy, shaky camera. My mom sitting in her car, hair tied back, no makeup, pale face. She looked right into the lens and said, "You think you've won, Ethan, but all you did was destroy us. You gave us court papers, we gave you life." Click. That was it. No threats, no tears, just cold guilt, delivered like a sniper shot. I sent it straight to Jonathan. No hesitation. His reply, "That alone is enough to violate the terms we're about to ask for." Because now we weren't just going to court over $8,000. We were filing a formal countersuit. Emotional distress, harassment, public defamation, and the evidence, God, the evidence we had was airtight. Emails, fake complaints, staged packages, covert video messages, the whole twisted scrapbook. I should have been scared. I felt calm. Because this time, they couldn't lie their way out of it. The court date was set. A Tuesday morning. Rainy, gray, felt poetic. I walked in wearing the one decent suit I owned. Jonathan carried a folder 2 inches thick. Across the room, my parents looked small. My dad in a stiff blazer, my mom in pearls like she was at brunch. Marissa wasn't there. Their new lawyer was younger, slick, all confidence and no substance. We sat. The judge, a woman in her 50s with a voice like gravel, called the case. Jonathan opened with a statement that was measured and brutal. No emotion, just facts. The plaintiff was misled, manipulated, and defrauded by immediate family members who used his savings without consent and then launched a campaign of retaliation when he sought legal remedy. He presented the signed safe deposit note, the messages, the surveillance footage, the university complaint response, the fake landlord call, the video. Each piece landed like a hammer. Their lawyer fumbled, tried to spin it as a family misunderstanding, said I was struggling emotionally and had overreacted. The judge asked one question. Did the parents have written permission to use the funds? Silence. Then my dad said, "It was implied." The judge shook her head. She ruled in our favor within the hour. They were ordered to pay back the full $800,000 plus court costs, plus $5,000 in damages for emotional distress. And that wasn't even the end of it. 2 days later, Jonathan received a message from someone unexpected. Elisa, my father's half-sister. She introduced herself politely, said she lived 3 states away, said she'd been following my mom's blog for years, and that when she read one of the older posts since deleted called "Family Means Forgiveness," something didn't sit right. So she dug deeper. Turns out she'd been disowned by my father's side decades ago. Quietly erased. For what? Speaking out when she was 19. She said, "I saw the comment you left on your mom's blog. The one they deleted. That was you, wasn't it?" It was. Elisa said she'd been watching the public image my parents maintained for years. Perfect family, perfect house, inspirational nonsense. She said she was done watching. And then she dropped the bomb. Attached was a screenshot of a group chat between my mom, dad, Marissa, and Kyle, and they weren't just gossiping. They were planning, "He's unstable. We need people to question his memory. Ethan's too cold, too calculated. Let's make him look obsessive. Jason, should I leak some grad school stuff? Marissa, Just enough to make people uncomfortable siding with him. That wasn't concern. That was strategy. A coordinated character assassination. Jonathan submitted it immediately. Filed for an emergency restraining order against further contact. Included a clause about malicious intent. We didn't ask for more money this time. We asked for silence. The judge approved it within 48 hours. They were barred from any further communication, direct or indirect. All online harassment ceased. No more messages, no more packages. They finally went quiet. But silence, I learned, doesn't mean peace, because peace comes from inside, and mine was still under repair. With the settlement money, I did 3 things. Paid off my remaining tuition, bought new locks and a new camera system, donated part of it to a small scholarship fund for students who'd been financially cut off by their families. No press release, no announcement. Just a way to take something awful and plant something useful in its place. It's strange. The things that linger, the anger fades, so does the sadness. But the disbelief that stays, I'll never fully understand how 2 people who raised me could justify it all. Not just the money, but the smear campaign, the guilt, the lies. They weren't trying to hurt me, they were trying to control me. And when that failed, they tried to destroy me. But they lost, not just the court case, they lost the story, because I took it back. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of being the villain in theirs. For a while, there was quiet. Not peace, not closure, just quiet. It felt like standing in the eye of a storm. Everything was still. But you could sense the weight of what had passed and what might still come. I stopped checking old emails, stopped refreshing threads or wondering what they were saying behind closed doors. I'd won, on paper at least. The settlement was finalized. The restraining order in place, their lawyers quiet. But even silence, I've learned, can be weaponized. And it was. About 2 months later, I was at a bookstore. A tiny, tucked-away shop I like to visit on weekends. I was thumbing through a second-hand copy of The Stranger when the shopkeeper waved me over. "You've got a package," he said. "Dropped off this morning. Didn't look like mail." It was a padded envelope. My full name on the front, no return address. My stomach sank. I took it home. Let it sit on the counter for an hour before I opened it. Inside a flash drive, no note, no clue who sent it. I ran a full scan on my laptop. Nothing malicious. Then I opened the file. It was a video, 30 seconds long. My mom, in her car, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back, no smile. She stared into the camera like she was about to deliver a sermon. "You think you've moved on," she said, "but you haven't. We gave you everything, and you gave us court papers. Don't think we won't remind you who you are." Click. End of message. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I emailed it to Jonathan. His response came an hour later. "This is a violation. We'll file it in the record immediately." He didn't ask if I was okay. He knew the answer. I was exhausted. Not just from what they did, but from how long they were willing to keep doing it. You'd think, after court losses, restraining orders, and public exposure, they'd retreat. But they didn't care about winning anymore. They wanted to haunt me. I got a second camera installed in the stairwell, kept all deliveries sealed, labeled, logged, filed a harassment record with the local police. Not a single incident this time, a full timeline. Names, screenshots, statements. I knew they'd never stop unless someone made them. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get more surreal, I heard from Alyssa again. The half-sister I never knew existed. My father's forgotten daughter. She'd been quiet since the settlement, but now she sent a one-line message. "Check your dad's old Facebook friends list. Look for someone named Mish Roberts." I didn't know what I was expecting, but when I found the profile low activity, no photos, barely a real name, I noticed a familiar follower. My mom, still following, still watching. Then it clicked. This wasn't over because they weren't just parents anymore. They were fanatics. Fanatics for a version of the past that I had broken. They needed me to be the ungrateful son, the broken one, so their choices would make sense, so their theft could be rationalized as love, so the world wouldn't see them for what they were, manipulators who couldn't handle losing control. One last letter came a few weeks later. No envelope, just a folded piece of thick paper wedged into the crack of my mailbox door. Inside was a photograph. Me, age 12, laughing at the dinner table, everyone around me smiling. On the back, in thick black marker, "You became the bad guy. Congratulations." I stared at it for a while, then I burned it in my sink. Watched the ashes swirl down the drain. Gone. I've moved again since then. Different part of the city. New name on the lease, no forwarding address. I don't keep photos from childhood. No memorabilia, no old birthday cards. I keep the legal documents scanned, backed up, organized, but that's it. The rest gone. Erased. Sometimes, people ask me why I didn't just forgive. Well, why I didn't move on in the traditional sense. I tell them forgiveness is a gift, one that has to be earned. And they didn't want it, and they wanted control. What I gave them instead was consequence. Now, I live quietly. I teach a few classes, write a little, read more than I used to. I help out with the scholarship fund from time to time. Occasionally, I hear from students who benefited, kids with toxic families, estranged parents, familiar stories. They say thank you. I always tell them the same thing. You're not crazy, and you're not alone. Because that's the truth. No one ever tells you growing up. Sometimes your family is the problem, and sometimes walking away isn't a betrayal. It's survival. I haven't heard from them in nearly a year. No letters, no calls, no packages, but I know better than to expect peace forever. They may show up again. They may try something else, but I'm ready now. Not just with cameras and court filings, but inside, there's no more doubt, no more guilt, just truth and freedom. If that makes me the villain in their story, so be it, because in mine I'm finally free.